Hello and welcome to Marvelous French. In today's lesson, we're going to take a look at the chorus of a song called Avant toi. This song came out in 2019 and is performed by a French duo called Vitaa et Slimane. First, let's take a look at a clip of the chorus from the official video.
Avant toi, je n'avais rien. Avant toi, on m'a pas montré le chemin. Je sais le ciel ne m'en veut pas d'avoir posé les yeux sur toi. Avant toi, on m'a pas montré le chemin.
So now let's take a look at the lyrics from the chorus and their overall meaning before we go back and take a closer look at each line and break it down. So we start with Avant toi, je n'avais rien, which we can translate in English as before you, meaning before you came along, before you came into my life, I had nothing. I didn't have anything. Ne rien is a negation meaning nothing, not anything. The ne becomes an apostrophe in front of a vowel for sound reasons. Je n'avais rien. I didn't have anything. Then we have Avant toi, on m'a pas montré le chemin, which literally means before you, one didn't show me the way, or they didn't show me the way. In more natural English, we might say, no one showed me the way, or I wasn't shown the way. In other words, I didn't have a purpose. I didn't know what I was doing. No one was there to guide me through life or give me a sense of direction. Now, it can be a little tricky trying to translate a song from one language to another because sometimes it just doesn't flow as well when you try to translate it, but hopefully this gives you an idea of what's being communicated. The main verb here is montré, which means to show. It's conjugated in the past tense here, on m'a montré, and then made negative with the negation ne pas. On m'a pas montré. Le chemin means the way or the path. So the next line is je sais, le ciel ne m'en veut pas, which we can translate as I know, heaven doesn't blame me or heaven doesn't hold it against me. D'avoir posé les yeux sur toi, for having laid eyes on you. And then finally we repeat the second line of the chorus, which again is Avant toi, on ne m'a pas montré le chemin. Before you, no one showed me the way. So now let's take a closer look at each line, and as usual, we'll talk about interesting vocabulary and grammar. So if we go back to the first line of our chorus, we have Avant toi, je n'avais rien. Before you, I had nothing. I didn't have anything. So let's talk about toi, which translates as you. First of all, this is the informal singular form of you when you're talking to one person who you know well, a friend, a family member, a peer, a colleague. If this were the formal and or plural form of you, we would use vous. Avons vous. The use of the informal version of you makes sense here as this is a love song, addressed presumably to the love of one's life, so we're keeping things informal. Another thing to note is there are several forms of the informal you in French depending on the grammatical role of the word in the sentence. The formal and or plural version, vous, wouldn't change, but the informal version does. There's toi, which we have here, but also tu, tu, and te, te. So let's talk a bit about the difference between these three forms. Now, tu, tu is informal singular. We're focusing on the informal singular forms of you here, and it's the subject pronoun, the subject of the sentence, the doer, the person who's performing the action or doing the verb. So here are a couple of examples. Tu manges, you eat. Tu es français, you're French. In these sentences, the pronoun you acts as the subject. You're the one who's eating. You're the one who's French. So this you is the subject, and in French this calls for tu, tu. On the other hand, te, which again is te, is what we call the object pronoun. It means that the verb is performed on the pronoun. Here are some examples. Je te vois, I see you. Je te parle. I talk to you. So the word you is no longer the subject or the doer. I'm performing an action on you. I'm seeing you. I'm talking to you. You're not the one seeing or talking. You're the recipient of my actions, what we call the object. You're being seen and talked to. In this case, we use te, te. Now, toi, which we call a stressed pronoun or a disjunctive pronoun, is used in several specific cases in French. We're just going to briefly talk about a few of the more common cases for the purpose of this video. So, toi and stressed pronouns in general are used after prepositions like avant here, which means before. A preposition is a small word or sometimes set of words that tells you something about the relationship between things, either as far as location, for example, under, on top of, next to, or a preposition can also tell you about the relationship between things as far as time is concerned. For example, before, which we have here, avant in French, or after, for example. So when we use the informal singular form of you after a preposition, we need to use toi. Before you is avant toi. After you, après toi. Because of you, à cause de toi. You can't use tu in these examples. You don't say avant tu or après tu. So here's a little extract of a bit of French that was used in the intro of an English language song, How Many Times, by an artist called Tinashe. Can you spot the mistake here? Il me plaît d'être avec tu, which is supposed to mean I like being with you. Avec means with and is a preposition. So how would we translate with you in French? That's right. With you should be avec toi, not avec tu. Il me plaît d'être avec toi. So at any rate, we use toi after prepositions. We also use toi after words like and, or, as well as after sais, C''est, which means it is, or this, that is. Here are some examples. Oui, ça va, et toi? Yes, I'm doing well, and you? Because we're using et, which means and, we have to use toi. We can't say et tu, like we do in Latin. And as we already mentioned, we also use toi with it, that, this is, so c'est toi, it's you. We can't say c'est tu. Here's a list of the stressed pronouns in French. Me would be moi, as in with me, avec moi. You, informal singular, once again, is toi, as in avec toi. Him would be lui. Her would be elle. Oneself is soi. Us is nous. And you, formal and or plural, is vous. Them, masculine, meaning we have a group of males or a mixed group of males and females, is going to be eux. And them in the feminine, meaning an all-female group, is going to be elle. So those are our stressed pronouns. Now let's go to the next line. Avant toi, on ne m'a pas montré le chemin. Before you, one didn't show me the way. They didn't show me the way. No one showed me the way. First of all, we see that we have a bit of rhyme here. We had rien at the end of the previous line, and now we have chemin at the end of our next line. So rien, chemin. But anyway, let's talk a bit about the use of on, O-N here. In other contexts, on can often mean we, W-E, the same as nous. For example, on est allé à la plage. We went to the beach. But on can also be translated in other contexts as one, or the general they, or the general you, which is how it's being used in this song. So here are some examples. On regarde beaucoup de films en France. They watch a lot of movies in France. This is just a generalization about people in France. On doit respecter les autres. You, meaning all of us, all of you, must respect others. In these examples, on doesn't represent a particular person or group of people, but it's a general reference to people. In the song, we have on m'a pas montré le chemin, literally, one didn't show me the way. In more natural English, we can translate this as no one showed me the way. There wasn't anyone there to show me the way. Now, a note about the way that the lyrics have been transcribed. We have on m'a pas montré le chemin with an N apostrophe. This is short for ne, N-E. So technically, it would be on ne m'a pas montré le chemin, but in casual spoken French, the pronunciation of the E sound in words sometimes gets omitted. So it sounds like on m'a pas. Now, on a separate note, if words like ne, small single-syllable words that end in the letter E, are followed by a vowel, we must remove the E and replace it with an apostrophe, whether we're speaking casually or not. So in the previous line, we had je n'avais rien. There, we can't say je ne avais rien. The ne must be contracted to an apostrophe because it's followed by a vowel, the letter A in ave. Truncating ne to an apostrophe in front of a consonant, on the other hand, is not grammatically correct and is only done in spoken casual French. So in other words, if we look at our previous line, je n'avais rien, we must have the N apostrophe. That is not just a transcription of casual spoken French. Whether we're writing or speaking, formally or informally, we have to truncate ne to an apostrophe because it's followed by a vowel. On the other hand, in the second line, on m'a pas montré le chemin, by all rights we should not be truncating anything because ne is followed by a consonant. But this is just a transcription of what's happening in spoken casual French. Now, a lot of times the ne will just be dropped altogether in spoken French. So, for example, if we want to say I don't know, you might hear je sais pas or even je sais pas instead of je ne sais pas. But you might also hear je ne sais pas with the omitted E sound. So the next line is je sais, le ciel ne m'en veut pas, which we can translate as I know, heaven doesn't blame me or heaven doesn't hold it against me. Le ciel can mean sky, but it can also mean heaven, as it does here. Another common way to translate heaven in French is le paradis, as in paradise. Ne m'en veux pas comes from the set expression en vouloir à quelqu'un, which means to be annoyed, angry, or mad at someone, or to hold a grudge against someone, to blame them, to resent them. It's made negative here with the negation ne pas, so we can translate it as heaven doesn't blame me. Next we have d'avoir posé les yeux sur toi, for having laid eyes on you, for laying eyes on you. Our main verb here is poser, which means to put or to place. Poser les yeux sur quelque chose means to lay eyes on something. Poser is conjugated in a tense called the past infinitive, which often translates as having done something or to have done something. For example, elle est contente de t'avoir rencontré means she's happy to have met you. French is quite precise when it comes to tenses. When you have an expression that calls for an infinitive, but the infinitive takes place before the other verb, and there's only one subject, this triggers the past infinitive. So in the song we have, le ciel ne m'en veut pas d'avoir posé les yeux sur toi. Heaven doesn't blame me for having laid eyes on you, or for laying eyes on you. The expression used here to mean to blame someone for doing something requires an infinitive in French. En vouloir à quelqu'un de faire quelque chose. The first portion, heaven doesn't blame me, is in the present tense. The second portion is in the past. The speaker laid eyes on the person they're addressing sometime in the past. Because the infinitive in this case took place in the past before the main verb, we use the past infinitive. In English, we're more flexible. Instead of saying, heaven doesn't blame me for having laid eyes on you, which can sound clunky, we can just say, heaven doesn't blame me for laying eyes on you. French is more precise, however, because laying eyes on you took place in the past, before the first part of the sentence, we have to use a past tense. For example, when you want to thank someone for doing something, you can use the expression, merci de faire quelque chose, where the thing you're thanking someone for doing is in the infinitive. So compare merci d'attendre, thank you for waiting, and merci d'avoir attendu, literally thank you for having waited. In English, we might just say thank you for waiting in both cases, but in French there is a difference. If you say merci d'attendre, thank you for waiting, you're thanking someone for currently waiting, or perhaps because they're going to wait for you sometime in the future. On the other hand, if you say merci d'avoir attendu, thank you for having waited, you're thanking someone for having waited. They waited for you sometime in the past, even if it was just a second ago, and you're thanking them for their past action. As far as conjugation, the past infinitive is formed much like le passé composé, with a helper verb, either avoir, to have, or être, to be, and a past participle. The infinitive of the helper verb is used here. So, for example, il est désolé d'avoir crié. He's sorry for shouting, or for having shouted. Crier, to shout, is conjugated with avoir in compound tenses such as le passé composé and the past infinitive. We use the infinitive of avoir and add the past participle, the equivalent of shouted, crier, C-R-I-E accent aigu, which gives us avoir crié. Here's an example of a verb that is conjugated with être instead of avoir in the past infinitive. Il est désolé d'être parti. He's sorry for leaving, for having left. Partir, which means to leave, is conjugated with être in compound tenses such as le passé composé and the past infinitive. So we have être in the infinitive and the past participle of partir, which is parti. Il est désolé d'être parti. Note that, as is the case with other compound tenses, the past participle agrees with the subject. So she's sorry for having left would be elle est désolée d'être partie, with the silent E at the end of partie to agree with the feminine subject, she or elle. And finally, we have sur toi. Le ciel ne m'en veut pas d'avoir posé les yeux sur toi. Heaven doesn't blame me for laying eyes on you. So here's another example of the stressed pronoun toi. As we previously mentioned, we use this form of the informal you after prepositions. In this case, our preposition is sur, which means on. And then finally, we repeat the second line of the chorus, which again is Avant toi, on ne m'a pas montré le chemin. Before you, no one showed me the way. Let's take one more look at the chorus.
Avant toi, je n'avais rien. Avant toi, on m'a pas montré le chemin. Je sais le ciel ne m'en veut pas d'avoir posé les yeux sur toi. Avant toi, on m'a pas montré le chemin.
And that concludes today's lesson. If you found this lesson helpful, please feel free to like, comment, share, and subscribe. Until next time, à la prochaine!